Beneath Greenland's rapidly retreating ice sheet lies an unexpected treasure, one of the world's largest untapped reserves of rare earth elements. As climate change accelerates the ice melt at unprecedented rates, it's creating a profound irony. The very crisis threatening this Arctic landscape is simultaneously unveiling economic opportunities that could further environmental degradation. Join us as we explore this complex intersection of climate science, resource economics, indigenous rights, and global geopolitics that's unfolding in one of Earth's most remote regions. The Kvanefjeld region in southern Greenland harbors an extraordinary secret. Recent geological surveys have identified approximately 11 million tons of rare earth oxide deposits, potentially making it the second largest deposit outside China. These critical minerals were first discovered in the 1950s, but remain largely inaccessible until now. As climate change forces Greenland's ice sheet to retreat at a rate of approximately 270 billion tons per year, these valuable resources are becoming available for extraction for the first time. Rare earth elements are essential components in technologies that define our modern world, from smartphones and computers to electric vehicles and wind turbines. These are not just consumer goods, but the very technologies we're counting on to transition away from fossil fuels and combat climate change. The timing of this discovery is particularly significant. Global demand for rare earth elements is projected to increase by a staggering 700% by 2050, driven by green technology adoption and digitalization. Currently, China dominates the market, controlling approximately 85% of global rare earth processing. This concentration creates supply vulnerabilities for Western economies and has elevated these minerals to strategic importance. Greenland's deposits represent a potential geopolitical shift in global supply chains. For industries dependent on these materials, from renewable energy to defense technology manufacturers, diversification of supply has become a national security priority for many countries. The minerals found in Greenland aren't just economically valuable, they're geopolitically vital in an increasingly resource-competitive world. The situation in Greenland presents a profound environmental paradox. The same climate change threatening the ice sheet is creating economic opportunities through resource extraction that could potentially accelerate environmental degradation. Mining operations would bring much-needed economic development to a region with limited industries beyond fishing and tourism. However, the environmental cost could be severe. Particularly concerning is the presence of uranium within these rare earth deposits. This radioactive element occurs naturally alongside the rare earth elements, creating additional environmental challenges. Current extraction methods would produce an estimated 8 million tons of chemical waste annually. This waste would require storage and specialized tailings dams built to withstand Greenland's harsh and increasingly unpredictable climate conditions. As permafrost thaws and precipitation patterns become more erratic across the region, the risk of containment failure grows substantially. Environmental impact assessments have identified several vulnerable ecosystems that could be affected by mining operations. The fjords of southern Greenland serve as critical habitats for marine mammals and fish species already under pressure from warming ocean temperatures. Local conservation groups have documented how even small-scale mining exploration activities have disrupted caribou migration patterns and breeding grounds for several bird species. The processing of rare earth elements presents additional environmental challenges beyond the extraction phase. Traditional processing methods require significant water, energy, and chemicals, producing substantial greenhouse gas emissions and toxic byproducts. Some mining companies have proposed experimental green mining techniques that claim to reduce environmental impacts, though these remain largely unproven at commercial scales. The Greenlandic government has established stringent environmental regulations, but questions remain about enforcement capacity in remote regions with limited infrastructure. For the approximately 56,000 residents of Greenland, many of whom are Inuit, these developments represent both opportunity and threat. The prospect of mining royalties could potentially fund greater political independence from Denmark, which still controls Greenland's foreign and defense policy despite granting self-rule in 2009. Economic self-sufficiency remains a prerequisite for full autonomy, making resource development an attractive pathway for many pro-independence advocates. Recent municipal elections in South Greenland saw pro-mining candidates gain significant support in areas closest to the proposed mining sites, where unemployment rates exceed 10%. The economic benefits could be transformative for a nation with limited economic opportunities. New jobs, infrastructure development, and government revenues could fund improved healthcare, education, and social services. For a young nation seeking to establish its place in the world, The rare earth deposits represent a potential path to economic sovereignty and political independence. Traditional hunters and fishers have expressed concerns about potential contamination of marine ecosystems that have sustained their communities for generations. This tension reflects broader debates about development models and cultural preservation across the Arctic. Indigenous knowledge systems offer valuable perspectives on sustainable resource management that are increasingly being incorporated into environmental assessment processes. Traditional ecological knowledge has proven remarkably accurate in predicting local climate change impacts, often preceding scientific observations by decades. Several Inuit communities have proposed alternative development models prioritizing smaller-scale mining operations with greater local ownership and stricter environmental controls. These approaches emphasize the kauchechi, a traditional principle of taking only what is needed while ensuring resources remain available for future generations. This philosophy stands in stark contrast to industrial-scale extraction models that prioritize maximum yield and profit over sustainability. The race for Greenland's mineral wealth has already triggered international maneuvering. In 2019, former U.S. President Donald Trump expressed interest in purchasing Greenland, an offer firmly rejected by both Greenlandic and Danish authorities. Meanwhile, Chinese state-affiliated mining companies have attempted to secure stakes in Greenlandic mining projects, prompting security concerns from NATO allies. This competition reflects the rare earth element's strategic importance in civilian and military technologies. The European Union has recently designated Greenland as a priority region in its Critical Raw Materials Act, offering potential financing and technical support for sustainable mining operations. This is part of broader Western efforts to reduce dependence on Chinese supply chains for strategic minerals. European officials have emphasized that any development must adhere to stringent environmental and social standards, positioning European investment as an alternative to less regulated approaches. The geopolitical significance extends beyond mineral extraction to transportation routes. As Arctic sea ice retreats, new shipping lanes are opening along Greenland's coast, potentially transforming global logistics networks. Countries including Russia, China, and the United States have increased their military presence in Arctic waters, conducting more frequent naval exercises and establishing new bases. Greenland's Thule Air Base, operated by the United States since the Cold War, has seen renewed investment as strategic competition intensifies. These newly accessible shipping routes could reduce journey times between Asia and Europe by up to 40% compared to traditional routes through the Suez Canal. This transformation of global shipping has profound implications for trade, military strategy, and environmental protection in previously inaccessible waters. As Greenland's ice continues to retreat, its strategic location between North America and Europe grows increasingly valuable from both commercial and military perspectives. As concerns about the environmental impact of rare earth mining grow, several companies have proposed innovative approaches to extraction and processing. These green mining techniques claim to reduce water usage, chemical requirements, and waste production. Some proposed methods include bioleaching, which uses bacteria to separate rare earth elements from ore, and advanced recycling technologies to recover minerals from electronic waste. However, skeptics question whether these technologies can be scaled to commercial production while remaining economically viable. Environmental groups have called for rigorous, independent assessment of these claims before any large-scale mining is approved. The Greenlandic government faces the challenge of evaluating these competing technologies and claims while building the regulatory capacity to monitor compliance. The promise of cleaner extraction must be weighed against the reality that any large-scale mining operation will inevitably alter the landscape and pose environmental risks. The prospect of rare earth mining has created divisions within Greenlandic communities. Those living closest to proposed mining sites often express the strongest opinions, both for and against development. In towns with high unemployment, the promise of jobs and economic activity has generated significant support. Local businesses anticipate contracts for services ranging from transportation to catering. However, communities dependent on traditional fishing and hunting fear contamination of food sources that have sustained their way of life for generations. Public consultations have sometimes become contentious, reflecting the high stakes for all involved. Some communities have called for legally binding agreements ensuring local hiring, revenue sharing, and environmental protections beyond what national regulations require. Others have demanded the right to reject projects entirely, regardless of national policy. These divisions reflect the difficult choices facing many indigenous communities worldwide as they navigate development pressures in a changing climate. As Greenland's ice retreats at approximately 270 billion tons per year, the island finds itself at the center of a complex intersection of climate science, geopolitics, and resource economics. The decisions made in the coming years will have profound implications for Greenland's environment, people, and international efforts to transition to renewable energy technologies that depend on these critical minerals. The Greenlandic case illustrates the difficult balance between economic development and environmental protection facing many resource-rich regions in a warming world. It also highlights how indigenous communities are asserting greater control over development decisions affecting their traditional territories. Climate scientists warn that Greenland's ice sheet has already passed several tipping points, with some degree of continued melting now inevitable regardless of global emission reductions. This reality forces difficult conversations about adaptation strategies in a rapidly changing environment. For Greenland, adaptation may include developing new economic sectors as traditional livelihoods become less viable due to changing ice and wildlife patterns. The challenge facing Greenland exemplifies the difficult trade-offs many nations must navigate in addressing climate change. The rare earth elements found beneath Greenland's melting ice are essential components for the very renewable energy technologies needed to combat climate change globally. Yet extracting these materials could cause local environmental damage and potentially accelerate climate impacts through mining emissions and ecosystem disruption. This paradox has no simple resolution. Some advocates propose phased development with strict environmental controls and mandatory restoration requirements. Others suggest focusing on recycling existing rare earth materials before extracting virgin resources. The Greenlandic government has commissioned studies exploring circular economy approaches that might minimize new extraction while maximizing economic benefits. Whatever path Greenland chooses will likely serve as a case study for other regions facing similar dilemmas between resource development and environmental protection in a climate change world. Greenland stands at a critical crossroads as climate change transforms both its physical landscape and its economic possibilities. The rare earth elements emerging from beneath its melting ice represent both opportunity and peril, the chance for economic independence and prosperity, but at potential environmental cost. The decisions made by Greenlandic authorities in the coming years will reverberate far beyond its shores, influencing global supply chains for the critical minerals needed in our transition away from fossil fuels. This situation encapsulates the complex ethical challenges of our climate change world: how to balance immediate economic needs against long-term environmental sustainability, how to respect indigenous rights while enabling development, and how to extract the very materials needed for green technology without causing further environmental harm. As Greenland navigates these difficult choices, it offers the world important lessons about the true complexity of climate adaptation and the need for nuanced approaches that honor both human needs and environmental limits. The paradox of Greenland's melting ice reveals that there are no simple solutions to our climate challenges, only difficult trade-offs that must be navigated with wisdom, foresight, and respect for both people and planet. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for updates. Your feedback is appreciated. We hope to see you again.